Hi, I'm LadyJenevia. Today I'll be reviewing the most excellent Apple TV series, Dickinson. Since I never got around to posting a review of season 1, even though I loved it, I'm going to do that first, and I rewatched season 1 before I watched my press screeners of season 2, and I went on an entire roller coaster of emotions, so I want you to relive that with me. The press embargo has lifted, so press are allowed to post our reviews of season 2, so if you would like to just skip ahead to that, I will put a timestamp on the screen so you know exactly where to go. I am aware that I could have just skipped the discussions of what's already aired, but to be honest, Dickinson deserves more hype. It's serving the people sapphic, poetic artistry. Also, I wrote my review of season 1 before I watched season 2, so if there are any dramatic shifts in my opinions in this video, I'm not setting out to contradict myself. I just wanted to keep my feedback of season 1 unbiased from how characters might change or evolve, for better or worse, in season 2. Now, let's get into Dickinson season 1. Dickinson begins by introducing the world to a brief overview of Emily Dickinson. She lived what many of us would consider an ordinary life. She had a passion for writing poetry, but a lot of her writing was not published until after she died. If any of you are tuning in to Dickinson hoping to watch a perfectly historically accurate biographical series, go somewhere else for that boring content. Dickinson as a series is about using the poetry of Emily Dickinson to spin a story about not only the yearning and the passion of Emily Dickinson, but to explore different experiences and emotions of women, not only then, but now. In season 1, we had Emily being terrorized by her father and her brother, both of whom suck. I never once had even a drop of sympathy to spare for them in season 1. Emily's father strongly disapproves of her becoming a published writer. He berates her, usually very loudly, anytime she tries to go ahead and put her art out there. She is also berated and punished for trying to participate in a more formal education. Remember when she and Sue cross-dressed to go to a university lecture? Emily is a passionate, vibrant, emotional protagonist, and Hailee Steinfeld really keeps you locked in there. You empathize with her when she's struggling with her romantic feelings, or any other types of feelings towards different characters, or just feelings within herself. Also, you see her struggling with her mental health. This is a good time to give some love to the anachronistic style of the show. Emily Dickinson lived in the 1800s, so technically this show is a period piece. However, there are so many modern things in the show's plot, dialogue, and even the more aesthetic parts of the show. You will hear artists like Billie Eilish and Lizzo in the soundtrack. When the young characters have a party, they don't just dance like they're in the 1800s. She has these interludes of going off and conversing with Death, and Death is portrayed by the rapper Wiz Khalifa. It's so random, and I love it. There are also some fun historical cameos in the show. Louisa May Alcott makes an appearance, and while she was there, she shaded Moby Dick. She said it was boring, and I loved that. Henry David Thoreau also appeared on the show, and do you know who played him? John Mulaney. I didn't know that was the chaos I was missing in my life until Dickinson served it to me. I really love that we're getting more of these period pieces with an anachronistic style. It's a great way to infuse more whimsy. I remember being a child madly in love with Heath Ledger, so of course, back in the day, A Knight's Tale was my jam. And that film is a scathing hit piece against nepotism, by the way. It's definitely worth a rewatch if you haven't seen it in a while. And that film has a more modern soundtrack sprinkled in throughout. Then, in more recent years, not only do we have Dickinson cranking things up to another level when it comes to anachronistic period pieces, but also we have The Great, which is a Hulu series, and if you have not watched that, hurry up and go watch it because it's really good. The last two main points I want to talk about regarding season 1 are Emily's love interests and the way that the show handles some of the more serious socio socio-political topics. Emily and Sue really took my emotions, threw them in a blender, and put that thing on puree. You can see that this is the love of Emily's life. She loves her, they love each other, but the heterodacity of 1800s social norms always have to get in the way. Not to mention Emily's brother, who sucks. Not as much as Emily's father, since he hit Emily, which is unforgivable. Throw him under the jail. But Emily's brother is so basic and annoying. Austin, you are far too mediocre to be acting up as much as you do in this season. It killed me when Sue came back and she finally confessed her feelings and Emily told her to go back to Austin. It just ruined everything. We could have had it all. But what I will say is that a lot of the reason why I want Emily to be with Sue is because Emily wants to be with Sue. I don't think that Sue is particularly remarkable or interesting as a character. When I was preparing to make this review, I really had to stop and think hard about what she has going for her in season 1, and it was a struggle. Let's switch over to talking about Ben Newton, Emily's tragic non-husband. One of the advantages that their love story had is that we got to see it play out from the beginning. Audiences love a great meet-cute, and we love seeing feelings grow deeper and more intense as the relationship progresses. With Emily and Sue, they're already in it. They have all this history, but we did not get to see that play out. We have to just take them at their word. This was a problem that I had when I first started reading the Shadow and Bone trilogy, where we were meant to be invested in Alina wanting to be with Mal because they grew up together as children, so she's already in love with him, but I couldn't go on that journey with her of seeing those feelings develop. And then they were immediately separated at the beginning of the first book. Dickinson did something very similar. Emily and Sue have known each other for years, and right from the jump in episode 1, we learn that they have a thing going on. We see them kiss, then Sue goes off for multiple episodes in the middle of the season, and she's not interacting with Emily at all. Conversely, when Emily meets Ben Newton for the first time, we get to see that first spark. We see that he defies these conventions of the 1800s and thinks that it's cool that she's a poet, and he's immediately supportive of what she does. Sue was never encouraging of Emily's writing in season 1 the way Ben was. Sue likes Emily's poems when they are love notes written specifically to her. Emily and Ben were more compatible. They were both unconventional. They had this similar passion for life and wanting something more from it. But not only was their love story tragic because Ben died young, it was tragic because feelings can often be more complicated than compatibility. I think Emily's feelings for Sue do run deeper than what she felt for Ben. But in her mind, they can't be together because of 1800s homophobia. And that's horrible. I also think that Emily's first love is her poetry. So if she can only fight for one thing that her family doesn't approve of, she's going to choose poetry. But that's just my analysis of the season 1 material. In an ideal world, she should absolutely be able to have her cake and eat it too. She should be able to write poetry, get it published, get an education, and have a girlfriend. In season 1, she would fight for her poetry the hardest, which is why she was willing to give Sue up when she started to have feelings for someone else, Ben. But no matter how many times her horrible family tries to stop her from writing, she will keep writing anyway. The final point in this love interests section is George. He sucks. He is the epitome of the "but I'm a nice guy, why don't you want to be with me" thing that some boys insist on doing. You see, these are not actually nice guys. George sucks. He's totally patriarchal, doesn't understand the meaning of the word no. He belongs in the same dumpster as Emily's father and brother. Boy, bye. The final point I want to highlight in this review of season 1 is that I love how the show addresses socio-political topics without being clumsy in doing so. In recent recent years, there has been an increased level of awareness that things are really bad in the world. Sexism, racism, really all of the isms. So writers sometimes decide to try to address these things in fiction. However, this becomes problematic when some of those people write these things only because they want the credit or the good PR of looking like a good person. Dickinson is very good at reaching the emotional heart of how you feel when you can't be with someone because you're the same gender. How do you feel when you can't express your authentic self or pursue your creative passion in life because your family and the world around you does not support that? Dickinson is a story mostly focusing on Emily Dickinson, a white woman in the 1800s. So, despite us as the viewer exploring this emotional turmoil she faces as a woman, I appreciate that they still took the time to address that she had a lot of privilege in her life. The Shakespeare episode is very insightful for getting Emily and certain people in the audience to remember to check your white privilege. I also love that they did a subplot about sexting, revenge, whatever you want to call this disturbing trend that's developed in recent years of people sharing nudes that they've been sent without that person's consent. That's probably the last thing you thought a period piece about Emily Dickinson would address, but they did exactly that. I also loved that the resolution to that subplot was that Lavinia doesn't feel ashamed of her body. Yes, her drawing was shared without her consent, but she realizes that it's not right for these people to preach modesty to her. It's her body and she can do what she wants with it. But also, the writing isn't saying that everyone should flaunt themselves. It's about how you feel as an individual. She had this entire journey in season 1 of learning to feel beautiful and confident in herself, and overall, I thought it was very well done. Moving on now to my season 2 review. It will be mostly spoiler-free. I don't want to get into too many specifics just yet, but stay tuned because I'm going to start posting weekly reviews of the episodes that go more in depth, especially once the season starts airing. I think the best way for me to review season 2 is to go through some of the lead characters and give you a general idea of what their seasonal arc will be addressing and my review of those arcs. In season 2, Emily Dickinson is focusing on things like trying to come into her own as a writer as it pertains to working towards publishing her work. This is something that raises a lot of interesting questions about what she wants for her work, her legacy, and her life. This also brings her into contact with Samuel Bowles, who is a person that actually existed, if you would like to Google him. He worked in publishing, and when he first showed up in this season, I was looking at him going, that face. Why is that face giving me bad juju? And then I realized, that's Caucasian Iron Fist. And immediately I was transported back to 3 or 4 years ago when Asian Twitter was on fire yet again because Hollywood was being racist yet again. But let's not talk about Asian Twitter today. I've had enough of it, and if you follow me on Twitter, you will already know why I'm saying that.
Ciao. Anyway, so
I really like Emily's material this season and how insightful it is in exploring the inner workings of an artist struggling with these different facets to do with making art and putting it out there. It feels like we get a better understanding of what she thinks and how she feels because of how abstract the show is in its storytelling style and presentation. Using season 1 as a reference, so I don't get yelled at by Apple TV publicists, do you remember how Emily would have those visits with Death where she spoke to him in his carriage and you got a deeper insight into her morbidity and her state of mind? Well, they do things like that a fair bit this season as well, and it's really fun to watch. As for Samuel Bowles, well, I can't tell you if he's a good guy or a bad guy, though admittedly that's probably a very reductive way of looking at the characters in this show or characters in general. I will fully admit to my bias going into it because of the baggage from a few years ago, but I will say that when it comes to his material, there is going to be drama, and a whole lot of it. I had a lot of thoughts and feelings, which I will start to share in more detail with you in future video reviews, because believe me, I have a lot to say about him. Let's switch over to Sue and Austin. They got married at the end of season 1, but once we get into season 2, we're going to start to see some conflicts arise in their relationship. What about, you might ask? Here's the thing. There are certain conversations you should have before you decide to sign a legally binding contract between yourself and another person. What do you want from your life? And what do you want or not want in your marriage? You need to make sure you're on the same page about certain things before you sign that contract. Sue and Austin either A, didn't have the conversation, or B, had the conversation but then disregarded what the other person said. I won't mince words with you viewers. Sue really irritated me this season. Now, I'm not completely devoid of empathy, and I think the writing explains her motivations for why she does what she does. But once you ring the bell cannot be unrung. Imagine my shock when I actually ended up liking Austin more than Sue this season. How the hell did that happen when in season 1, I couldn't stand him? Call it clever writing, call it gripping drama, call it LadyJenevia going on a storytelling roller coaster. The Dickinson parents also get a fair bit of time this season to explore some of the issues in their relationship with each other. It was definitely more time than I would have anticipated. I don't know how much I liked it because I think I just have less patience for people with the type of callous, old-fashioned ideals that these two have. They have on more than one occasion been a foil to Emily's desires to be an artist and a modern woman relative to the standards of living in the 1800s. But now I'm supposed to feel bad for the feelings of oppressors? My brain can analyze this material and come to the conclusion that the writers set out to give these characters more nuance as individuals outside of them just being the foils to Emily's self-actualization. But my heart is saying that I don't care and I don't feel bad for them. One of the most surprising revelations about this season was that Lavinia is awesome. She started off in season 1 being so immature and she had a lot of growing to do, but we saw that start to pick up more at the end of season 1. You know, what she did with the portraits and taking ownership of her body and her identity and her entire character as a person. Season 2 is picking up right where we left off. She is more independent now. She wants to do what she wants to do. Forget your sexist social conventions about what women should or shouldn't do. And I had so much fun watching her this season. Arguably more fun than I had watching Emily. Listen, I really enjoy Emily's story, but there is no denying that she has a lot of angst. And when we start to feel too burdened because we're worn down from the dumpster fire of a year that is 2020, Lavinia is the one that is here to serve good times. Another general thing that I really liked about this season is that they didn't just leave the subject matter of racism as an afterthought in only one episode of season 1. They're still very conscious of it in season 2, which I appreciate because for the most part, this show is lily white, and I appreciate that you are showing empathy as storytellers to the larger context of when and where all of this is taking place. Overall, I enjoyed Dickinson season 2 quite a bit. A lot of what viewers loved in season 1 is still there in season 2. I was so gripped by the story and the style of the show. I was very emotionally invested in the drama. Oh my god, there is so much drama. You thought season 1 was dramatic? I think season 2 is far more dramatic. And I'm erring on the side of caution when it comes to talking about season 2 for now, but definitely stay tuned because I'm going to be doing far more reviews about the show in the coming weeks, especially once the episodes start airing. I have so many opinions and I will get into all of them then. Also stay tuned because I am working on setting up some new interviews with amazing creatives from the film and television industries, and I'm also still working on my new video essay. It feels like it's going to be longer than I originally anticipated, but I promise I will do my best to not go as overboard with it as I did with my Knives Out video essay. That was a lot. Don't forget to like and comment since it really helps me out as a small content creator, and you can also follow me on social media. I promise I'm not always calling people out on social media. I prefer to have fun on there and talk about fiction that I'm watching. See you in the next one. Bye.